Hello, Tim Short here, doing a little talk on reflective journals as part of Sheila's presentation. I did this on Tuesday at the meeting, and I'm sending a recording for Thursday's meeting. Thanks everyone for tuning in and for being here. Yeah, reflective journals, it's something that I've been into for quite a while, and I have used different types of journals over the past few years. I even invested in one called Zelo, which was, I think, was about £30. You can get online. This is good for like setting targets. It uses positive psychology, target setting, reflection, um, in a particular format. That can be helpful, but you can get a lot of stuff off the internet if you want to do your own type of reflective journal or your own type of reflective practice. A journal basically is a tool where it allows you to sit down and reflect about things and to, if you like, compartmentalize things and then to introduce changes in your life based on that reflection, because we can sometimes get a bit too emotional ourselves, and not see the wood for the trees, as it were. Reflective journals are good, and if you are trying to make changes, I think that an essential way of trying to make sure that you make changes long lasting. We know from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and other neuroscientists have said it as well about the importance of sticking with a change for 30 to 60 days before it is properly in place. That's called habit forming. It can take between 30 to 60 days to stop bad habits and to create new ones. So you do need to stick with things. And the task that Sheila did with you are a great way to start. One of the first things that Sheila did is the list of kindness, gratitude, happiness, and positive things, three of them. And there's mine from Tuesday's night meeting. That's a good way of starting. Also, what Sheila did about the list and ticking things off, that's a great way of using a journal to set targets and to tick them off as you achieve them the next day. And again, there's mine from today, which I've already used. So there are two ways of getting going. The other thing Sheila mentioned was about putting all your thoughts down on paper and then looking at them and seeing where I am at that particular time. Am I in a good place? Am I in a bad place? How do I want to get better? How do I want to improve things? And using that as a basis. The big thing with journals is people say they haven't got time or they don't really work, etc. And they can't find time to find a way that suits you. But often, a lot of that is people resisting meaningful change. And when they come up against a stumbling block, or sometimes giving in at the first hurdle. So try to stick with things for 30 to 60 days to see how they do affect and change things. I've now internalized my reflective journals, and I actually do them mentally. So on the way into work, when I drive in, I mentally think about the things that have gone well for me over the previous day. I have these positive thinking things. Some of it can be the gratitude, kindness, and target setting that Sheila mentioned, but you can find your own ways too. One of the big things I use as a very basic level is the 3-in-1 approach, where you think of three things from the previous day or that day, depending on when you're doing it. But it's good to get into this habit early in the morning, is to think to yourself, three things that have gone well from that day and one thing that you'd improve upon. So it's positive. You don't say, oh, one thing that didn't go well. You say one thing I'd do differently, and you think about it and reflect about it, and then think about how you would do that differently the next time. So it's developmental, and it's about getting you into a better place. The mind can be very negative, so acknowledging the three positives is important too, because the three positives show that there are good things in the day, and often they're hidden in plain sight. You don't always acknowledge them. It might be a child's smile, listening to some music, waking up and being alive that day. It can be something as simple as that. So find three positives and then think about one thing. I wasn't happy with that. What would I do differently? And then think about that and then take that into the next day. So the 3-1 approach is a very basic tool that anyone can use. And at first you can write them down as part of a journal, and then you can do them mentally, which is what I do each morning. Sometimes at weekends I can find it harder to do the journal because I've got other distractions with the baby, etc. But I tend to do my mental journal when I exercise. So I exercise Saturday and Sunday, and I'll think through all the things then. I also always carry around with me a book, and in this book I will write down my 3-in-1, and I will write down the things from that day that I've thought about. I also like to write, so I put ideas in there, and I'll always have a book with me. And as Sheila may have mentioned, you can have a personal development journal where you write all the good things that you want to do and things that interest you, and keep it in journals and books, and take notes when you read books. Take notes. But the 3-in-1 approach, you can start today, you can start tomorrow. 3 good things, 1 thing that you'd improve, and then you can look to expand your reflective journal practice, and then try to internalize it so it's part of your daily thinking about life. What we're ultimately trying to get to here is when something happens, it's about turning it into a positive. So you might sometimes have an internal reaction like, oh, that's typical, and that always happens to me, and this doesn't work, and nothing I ever do works out well, and those kind of attitudes. And it's interesting because often the biggest bully in your life, people talk about bullies, external things and external pressures, but the biggest bully in your life is you, when you put ridiculous pressure on yourself and reinforce moods through negative thinking. And it's basically about through neuroplasticity, which means changing your interpretation of things and training your brain to do that. We now know this works. It's by doing that that you can become a better person day to day. So challenge the thinking and use the reflective journal to do that, and then internalize what you've learned from the journal, and make yourself a better person, because ultimately we're trying to get better day to day. We are going to have problems. We are going to have bad things to happen. We will sometimes feel like um, we took some backward steps, but we need to keep moving forward. The long arc of the universe is one towards progress, said Martin Luther King, and it's important to make sure that we believe that for our own lives as well. Some people call it their own spiritual journey. Some people attach it to a career, professional development, but ultimately it's about making you a better, more effective person who can deal with things. When things come up, you deal with them and you move on, and you don't think in that black and white, oh, this is typical. It's about challenging that. Sometimes you'll have that internal angst, and it's how you then interpret it and act, which is the hallmark of someone who is a constructive person and someone who is a destructive person. And often it's those internal battles which define who you are as a person. So it's important to make sure that you are in charge of things, and that you don't let your mind become the master, because ultimately it's a very good servant, but it's a very poor master. So it's important to put that into context as well. Sometimes you can live with people and encounter people who you feel don't interpret the world you do, and you might feel, well, I know things like how to be a better person, and those people don't. But ultimately, people tell you things as well, and you might not always internalize them. And it's about you finding your own journey, becoming better, and then through example, helping others. And I suppose that's what Hope Street's about. I suppose that's what a reflective journal is about. You can only really help others by becoming a better person yourself, and then helping them on their journeys, because ultimately you need to make the changes yourself. So reflective journal, use the 3-1 approach, write it down, apply it mentally. Um, Write down all your thoughts, ideas in the journal, like Sheila did in the first task. Think about your targets for the day, writing them each morning, ticking them off. And think about the kindness, gratitude, positive happiness, 3 things for each day as well. You might use all of those methods, some of those methods. Find your own way. But the truth is in the living, if you like. And after 30 to 60 days, you should be able to work out whether a reflective journal has benefited you or not. And like most things, it isn't, a magic thing. I do a lot of meditation. When I first started, it was very difficult. Now I can meditate for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes. I use an app to help me. And you've got to give things 30 days to make an impact. And sometimes the benefits are subtle. So me compared to a month ago, I feel I'm a better person. Me compared to a year ago, I feel I'm a better person. Me compared to last week, it's hard to gauge things because they're often quite subtle. But again, we're looking to make progress and become better. And most importantly, never ever give up. Use a reflective journal to get going, and get on your own journey. Thank you.